think it's okay to get started, Andrea. Would you like me to stop sharing screen or do you want to use this agenda here?
Yeah, and there's keep the agenda.
Probably till we get to the video.
How?
Yeah.
So how many of you speak Autumn? Yay! And Jane too? Do you speak Autumn?
Only a few words. Even after all this time, I'm shy about it, but I recognize a few words. I can say a few.
Like Satham, Satham,
Hashu,
Hashu,
Skotash.
how bagi ay nagpi bashachi ma se sapentatam to bojo ke anako ke haicho tumum what si haicho ita aga mata maaga itam Jeremy cha Jacelle cha Lisa what's good haicho and the mupa ko maaga nyoi ja maaga matas mas ma bojo ita ja jamhashana. So welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here with us. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm thankful that you took time out of your evening. And it's okay if you're eating, so don't feel any way. I have my sandwich ready for me too, but only if you share. No, I'm just kidding. I see that Evan quickly made some jamet, and he's eating his jamet. So first, I'll sing a song in honor of today, but also to honor all of you, and especially the candidates as they're on their journey. And I won't say too much about it, except that this song is very personal to me. It was a song that came to me when I first started teaching at ASU. I can just hear Dwayne saying, AS who? Yes, ASU. And it was the first time that the Autumn language was being offered there. And of all its years that it's been open. So it was quite an honor to start teaching there as well. And of course, I've been with Tohono Autumn Community College forever. It's been 20 years since I've been there. And so, and this song that I'm going to share with you is about the Oitpaktoak that's next to ASU. And the reason it has relevance is because it's where that is located at the base. Our ancestors had a field that they used to plant, and every now and then, so like 1 year they would plant, and then they would another year they would plant at a different area, so that it would gain revitalize its fertilization, the life and health of the fertilizing the dirt. And so, but since that time of our ancestors, it has long been just considered a dead field. And so that mountain, the Autumn there call it Oitpaktoak, meaning the dead mountain field. So, but as you know, it's not a dead field, because this song is about how our ancestors have planted for the future, and the future of having fields of not just plants, but of autumn, who will then someday also grow and plant, and then for them to harvest and also bless the field of future generations. So it's that cycle of planting and sowing and reaping and planting and sowing and being blessed every time, and being enlightened each time as new things come and new things are learned. And so I bless the students' journey for with this new Đọc cái ik shu dak. Shu dak. Oi bang to no one hơ cha tư gây wu shan him. Oi bang to no one hơ cha tư sha bi gu shan him. Kunya si swa hi war ni ta ka. Sapo tonringa autumn mama sim. Sorry. Đọc cái u sợ tao mà. Trong stream không mà. Ike. Oi bang to no one hơ cha tư gây wu shan him. Oi bang to no one hơ cha tư sha bi gu shan him. Kunya si swa hi war ni ta kang. Sapo tonaring autumn mama sim. Oi bang to no one hơ cha tư yu shan him. Oi bang to no one hơ cha tư sha bi gu shan him. Kunya si swa hi war himata. Sapo tonaring autumn mama sim. Oi bang to no hoang hơ cha tư yu shan him. Kunya si swa hi war ni ta ka. Sapo tonaring autumn mama sim. Oi bang to no hoang hơ cha tư sha bi gu shan him. Kunya si swa hi war himata. Sapo tonaring autumn mama sim. So just know that our ancestors are filled with joy as they are walking among you, guiding you, inspiring you, and encouraging you to keep on with your journey. Sapa. So for this evening, we have the agenda up, and basically, thankfully, the PhD candidates are also our TOCC adjunct instructors, with the exception of Jacelle. She's a full-time faculty for the Tohono studies. And so they pre-recorded their presentations And so you'll be watching that video, and then afterwards you can chime in with questions. And I believe Jeremy Johns is here with, yes, Jeremy Johns is here with us. And unfortunately, Jacelle and Lisa won't be able to join us this evening. So if you have any questions while you're watching the videos or have any comments, feel free to use the chat to ask your questions, and then we'll get to them after the video. And then once we finished with the Q&A, then Juana will share some remarks, and then we end our series for the Native American Heritage Month series that we've had so far. Aiksha? Aikam Francis?
All right, Skukdash, welcome everybody to the Tohono Community College Native American Heritage Month panel discussion with myself, Jacelle Ramon-Sauberan, Rivas-Palacios, and Jeremy Johns. And we'll be sharing with you today about our educational journeys as PhD students candidates. So before we get started, I want us to go around and introduce ourselves, and then we have a few questions that we'll be answering, and like I said, sharing our journeys with you and our experiences. So Jeremy, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jeremy Johns. So I am originally from the Occitan Indian community in Arizona, and I've been working with TOCC for about 4 years now, teaching Tohono languages from levels 101 to 102.
Okay, great. Lisa?
So my name's Rivas-Palacios, and I'm from South Comlick in the Waugiwarka district. And I am a millionth year PhD student in the School of Anthropology at the University of Arizona. And I received my bachelor's degree at U of A also in anthropology. And I received my master's degree also at U of A in American Indian Studies. And then I jumped back to the School of Anthropology, continuing to pursue my interest in archaeology. I also work as a tribal archaeological monitor for the Tohono Nation with a special interest in NAGPRA. Thank you.
Yep. And also too, Lisa just recently joined Tohono Community College as an adjunct instructor. And Jeremy, let's jump back to you. Do you want to share a little bit about your undergrad, master's, and now into your PhD?
Yeah, so I got my undergrad at University of Hawaii. I double majored in linguistics and Spanish. And then I went to get a master's in American Indian Studies at ASU. And then I just was not ready at that point to do a PhD. So I kept going back to like the master's programs because they're much shorter. So I did a master's in American Indian Studies, and then I did one in education, and then one in Native American linguistics. The education and the AIS were both from ASU, and then the Native American linguistics was from U of A. And then I finally decided I'm ready to do a PhD. I've been in school for most of my life, so why not? And so now I'm at Yale University working on my, not dissertation yet, but I'm in my third year basically here.
Okay, great. So as for myself, Skikdash, Anyap Jiggy, Jacelle Ramon-Sauberan, Chapwalk Amachit. So good day, my name is Jacelle Ramon-Sauberan. I come from the Santa Vera Community District, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of Arizona in American Indian Studies. I've been with TOCC since 2018. I started off as an adjunct instructor, and then January of this year, I actually took on the position as full-time faculty within the Tohono Studies program. So very exciting. I'm really close to being done. So I'm in the stage of writing my dissertation. Prior to that, I got my master's in American Indian Studies from the U of A as well. And then my bachelor's is in journalism with a minor in American Indian Studies from the U of A as well. I'm a second generation Wildcat. I'm very proud of that. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into our questions that we have. And like I said, share about who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, and what goals and what we see for our futures as we pursue our PhD degrees. So our first question, which can be a loaded question, is what made you want to pursue a PhD? So Lisa, would you like to start us off and share with everybody?
Sure. Let me backtrack. So I didn't actually think I didn't look into what a PhD was at all. I just happened to be working a project. I was doing archaeological monitoring. Let me again, jump back again. I was still my master's student in American Indian Studies, and my interests were archaeology at that point in time, and the whole COM and the continuing connections to the Hukam, the O'odham ancestors. And so my master's thesis was related to water use, water technologies. I come from the main res in South Comlick, and so and historically, and of course presently, it's known that water sources are few and far between, but there are water sources because Walgiork is just right there. So we had, I was thinking about our village systems, and again, just our ability to persist in an arid landscape. Particularly, I always grew up playing at the Wa'a and getting in trouble for going to the Wa'a and trying to catch turtles in the Wa'a. And, it was a fun place to go as a kid, and went swimming in the Wa'a. And so I just thought of like how fun it is to be able to have this memory of this connection to a very important water feature on the landscape. And being interested in anthropology, being interested in archaeology, I decided to study those water resources back in time during the time of the Hukam. And I just thought, wow, we're so knowledgeable and we so practice these elements of what's considered deep in time practices on the landscape. And so my master's thesis, I explored that. And then I continued to work as a tribal archaeological monitor for the Tohono O'odham Nation. And so I was working a project that was run by the U of A. It was the U of A's archaeological field school, and they were excavating a historic mission site that's just north of Nogales. And the field school was being run by a professor in the School of Anthropology, and some of her colleagues who are been archaeologists for a long time. And so they asked, well, why don't you pursue or what are you going to do when you finish your master's program? And I told them, I don't know, just probably keep on doing this. I like doing this a lot. I think it's really interesting. I like being outside a lot. I like meeting new people. And I just learned a lot about, about our connections to the past, whether it's historic or prehistoric. But I like this. So I think I'm just going to get my master's degree and keep monitoring. And one of the field school directors, she said, why don't you have you considered going to school to get your PhD? And I said, no, I haven't. And she said, well, I think you really should look into it. She's like, well, because I told her about my research on my master's work, and she thought, like, you really should consider getting a PhD. And I said, well, how would that work? I've never done any of the background research on how to get a PhD, and I don't. It will all be news to me because I've never considered going to get my PhD. And I should say, nor did I ever consider getting a master's degree. But what led to me getting my master's degree was also another faculty member at U of A who said, come on, just let's go. I will sit with you and we will do the application together and we can do this. Like, I see you getting your master's degree. The same thing happened with my PhD. It took one faculty member to tell me, I see you getting a PhD. I will help you. I will write a letter of recommendation for you. I will walk through the process with you. Let me know if you have any questions, if you run into any barriers, let me know. I will be available. And so it took these individuals actually telling me that it's, that they feel like see me in these programs and getting these advanced degrees. I couldn't think of that myself. I'm a first generation. My family, think they have some, I think they took some community classes before, but they never even attained an associate's degree, and they couldn't stay dedicated to a program long enough to attain an associate's degree because they had to work, family, that happens. And so, yeah, I didn't know, there was no model. There was no model for me to pursue higher education. And I didn't even think of it myself. It was just these individuals that I connected with in the field during my studies who actually encouraged me to apply, and felt that what I was interested in, the conversations we had, based on that alone, they felt like it was worth me putting in an application to, again, get a master's degree, to get a PhD. So I have to give, in a lot of ways, credit to them, because they are the ones who envisioned me in these places. I did not have that vision of myself at all. I did not see myself in these in a master's or PhD program. Yeah, I had no clue that that was something that would be possible for a human being. I had no clue. I didn't know the uses of either of those advanced degrees, and I did not consider going anywhere beyond my bachelor's degree. And even at that point, I had no idea what I was going to do beyond that. So these individuals who talked me into getting my PhD were instrumental in me actually putting in that application and being where I am today. So.
Great, thanks for sharing. Jeremy?
Yeah, so I've always had like an interest in language ever since I was a kid, both in terms of like the cultural aspect of language, sociolinguistic aspect of language, but also in terms of like the scientific, theoretical side of things. And it's one of those things that, I mean, even still, I sometimes tune out when people are talking to me because I'm not really paying attention to what they're saying. I'm paying more attention to how they're saying it and constructing like a little mini grammar of individual speech while they're talking to me. But in terms of like education, actually bridging that into higher education, I was really fortunate because my mom, when I was a kid, she decided that she wanted to get a college degree. And so I was still a little boy when she decided to do this. And so she went back to school and she would take me with her, basically. So when she was going to class, I would be going with her to class, or when she was going to her study groups, I would be going with her to her study groups. And so having been raised in that sort of environment was always very much like, this is just something that you do. You know, this is something that not only that you do, but that you can do. This is not off limits to you. Higher education is not off limits to you. And so I just always assumed that I was, after high school, I was going to go to college. And then after college, I don't know, I was going to go back to the community and start working again, which I did for a little while. But I always wanted to like take that extra step. So if you are in, you know, your undergrad, for example, you do learn a lot, but you don't learn everything. And especially if it's something that you're really, really interested in, there's so much more to learn that getting a master's or getting a PhD will allow you the opportunity to really delve into that topic so much more at an expert or a very, very profound level. And that's what I really wanted. I wanted to know as much as I could about language, about human language, but also about how those things could be applied to bring back home to the community and start to work on language revitalization and focus on creating more speakers and putting all of that knowledge. I mean, it's useless just to have it up here, but putting that knowledge into actual practical applications in the community. So I feel like having that background, going from my bachelor's to my master's and now working on my PhD, really helped me do that, to explore and understand these topics a lot more in depth, so that when I do finally come home, I can put them to use and help out, hopefully.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. As for myself, I grew up in the classroom as well. Both my parents were teachers in K through 12. And my dad, he taught 5th grade for the longest time. And my mom, she bounced around, but she was primarily elementary. And then she went to teaching middle school, and then ended her career with high school at Hashem Preparatory in Leadership. And you know, what she did, she always incorporated the language, history, culture, all of our traditions, everything. And so for me too, it was kind of this is what you're going to do after high school, and you're going to go to college. And both of my parents graduated from the University of Arizona. And so I was like, okay. So, and I went and I got my bachelor's. And then after that, I wanted to travel. So I traveled all over the place. I lived in some really amazing parts of the country. And then after that, my dad was the one that actually was like, you need to come back home. He was like, pursue that master's degree. And I kept kind of like putting it off and thinking about it. And it was just, you know, where I was at that time. And I felt like I could do so much more. And also wanting to come back home because I was living in Oklahoma and working for the Osage Nation at that time. And so I said, okay, so I came back home, and then I applied and I got in for my master's. And similar to Lisa, I was pretty much like talked into getting a PhD. I never in my life ever thought about, you know, becoming Dr. Jacelle or anything like that. It was just, you know, I really, you know, like through these steps in pursuing higher education, it was just kind of, you know, as we're all talking and sharing, we're like, we were going to do this, but we didn't know what was going to happen afterwards. And so through my master's, again, I had faculty within the American Indian Studies program was like, have you ever considered this? And I was like, no. And they're like, would you? And at first I was like, no, like, I don't want to do that. But the more conversations I had, and just, I love school, I love learning, I love reading, I research, like it's very much been a part of my life. And, you know, in a way, like, I don't know, the classroom is kind of like a safe space for me. And I've always kind of retreated back to it. And like, especially when I took a break from school, from getting for my PhD, I taught for a whole semester, and it was just exactly what I needed to get back into my program. But yeah, I essentially just kept having conversations and kept seeing like, you know, you should do this, you need to do this, you know, and me thinking about it. And of course, going back to family and talking to mentors and elders, and really, you know, saying, should I do this? Can I do this? You know, where's my support in doing this? Because it's getting a PhD is no joke. And it's a lot of hard work. And so of course, everybody was like, yes, do it. And we'll be here to support you every step of the way. And so I was like, okay. And I applied, and, you know, kind of pretty much started with my master's in 2014, graduated 2016. And then that same year started my PhD program, and I've been going straight since. And, you know, for me, it's just a lot of what I'm doing is for our people, my community, you know, and yeah, you know, my name is on the papers, you know, the assignments, everything I do. But, you know, again, this is for everybody, you know, and what I produce, and, you know, even my research and everything else. And, you know, and yeah, it's been an interesting, challenging journey. And, you know, and the higher up you get in education, the fewer there are of us, you know, and we need to have more, you know, more Native Americans that are pursuing higher education. And so, and you really have to find your support system in that. And thankfully, I've had a great support system, you know, along the way, and always calling up my mom, hey, do you have this book I can borrow? Do you have anything on this that I can use? And, you know, and then even those tough times, really talking with my dad, and, you know, and needing that encouragement, those conversations. And, you know, that's really kind of where it came from, and having others believing in me, and then me really taking a time, you know, to sit there and really think about it and be like, can I do this? Should I do this? Like, what does this mean for me? You know, and my family, because they're in it with me as well, you know, throughout this whole, you know, my whole educational journey, even starting as an undergrad. So yeah, you know, and it's really interesting to be with both of you too, because we just, all these similarities, you know, and having essentially this discussion conversation, and looking at that. And, you know, for our audience, wanting them to also understand that there are different doctoral degrees that you can obtain, and not every program is the same. And also to, you know, like with anything with pursuing higher education, yes, you're supposed to get, a bachelor's degree within 4 years. There's master's programs that are 1 year, 2, 3 years. And then, doctoral programs, they can range, from 3 years to 10 years, just all depends on what you're doing. And, also too, a big part of talking about graduate programs, for masters, a lot of times there's a thesis, and for for PhD, you have your dissertations. And what are those? And, looking at, the way I see it, it's just like this really huge, in-depth final paper projects is the best way to explain it. And, and that's essentially, how you go through with your PhD program, so let's talk a little bit more about that, and specific to all of our majors and what we're doing. So, what are you doing for your research, your dissertation? Maybe you have something similar to a dissertation, but it's not so much a dissertation, and kind of talking about that process. And, what do you hope to do with this research? Like, who do you want to look at it? Do you want it to be used in a classroom setting? Do you want it, to be specifically for your community? Like, what do you see? What are your hopes and dreams for your research? So Jeremy, let's start off with you, and you can tell us all about what you're doing.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So like I said, my degree is in linguistics, and the subfield of linguistics that I work in, or the theoretical framework that I work in, is something called generativist linguistics, which is this idea that language is sort of like a human specific thing, right? And so one of the things that we try to study and test are these theoretical and scientific applications of what are the parameters of human language. And so studying one language, for example, like all of them, should be able to tell us something about all languages all across the world, because all humans are equally endowed with, or theoretically equally endowed with, the same language faculty, right? So one of the things that I do is work on phonology and phonetics, which is the sound systems. So we don't have, like, for example, if you go to some universities, you might have something called oral exams, which you basically sit down with your professors and they kind of quiz you in a sort of discussion-y setting on various topics in the field. At Yale, we don't have that. We have what we call qualifying papers, and these are meant to basically show that we can do research at this level, at an academic level and at a PhD level, and contribute something to the field. And so my very first qualifying paper was on phonology of all-them reduplication. So if you've studied all-them, then you know that one of the ways that we make things plural in all-them is to copy some part of the word. So in English, we usually, when we don't want to talk about more than one of something, we add an S to the end. So like horse becomes horses. But in all-them, what we want to do is copy the first part of the word. Like if we have a word like Gabby, then we wouldn't say Gabyus, we would say Kakabyu. So as far as we know, though, that system is very understudied and it's extremely phonologically complex. And so my first QP was looking specifically at something called Moralic Theory. Basically, how do we do this, right? If you give a word to an all-them speaker that they've never heard before, they will right away be able to make it plural without having to think about it, because it's built into their mental grammar as native all-them speakers. So that's one of the things that I look at. It's very, very theoretic in terms of using something called like I said, Moralic Theory, the different frameworks that we're looking at. And those are things that I find, because I've been teaching all of them for a few years now, those are things that I find that people who want to just speak the language really don't care about. So there is an aspect of doing this linguistic work on the one hand, and making sure that I'm keeping in mind why I'm doing this work in the first place, right? So I want to do this work because I want it to be something that can be useful in documenting the language and teaching the language and making sure that we still have speakers of the language. And so to be able to do that, I need to take what I do in this very phonological, very esoteric way that only linguists can access, and turn that into something that somebody who has not gone to school for linguistics can understand, right? Which is the majority of the population of the world has not gone to school for linguistics. So this is something that should be restructured in a way that like a learner can understand these things. Right now, I'm working on something called bare noun phrase sort of constituents in all of them. So again, if you've studied all of them, you know that when we put a noun at the beginning of the word, we don't use the word for the. Typologically very weird to not do that, but we use it in the other parts of the phrase. So I'm looking at why that is, what's going on there. Autumn is at one end of the spectrum really well known in the field of linguistics because we have such free word order and we have no morphological marking, and that's super, super strange from a linguistic standpoint. Not strange, but very unique from a linguistic standpoint. And on the other spectrum, there is so much about autumn that we don't know. Like I said, fluent speakers know these things because these are built into their mental grammars, but linguistically speaking, we can't really explain these things. And there's been many times in my classes when people ask me, well, how do you say this? Or why do you say it this way? And I'm like, you just do because it just sounds right like that. I can't really give you a good excuse or a good reason for it right now, but check back with me in like 10 years and maybe I'll have figured it out by then. So there's still a lot that we don't know about our language. And that's one of the things that really I'm interested in here is looking at from a theoretical generativist aspect of what is human language and what can that tell us about the O'odham language, and then translating that into how can learners use this, or how can even speakers who are just interested in knowing more about the language that they speak, how can they use this and understand this? So that's one side of things. On the other side of things, I also look at sociolinguistic aspects. Both of you probably are very aware that in Western academic spaces, there's still a lot of colonial practices, a lot of non-native, non-Indigenous, very Eurocentrically based practices in terms of epistemology, ontology, and axiology. And so looking at how linguistics, the history of linguistics basically, which was at one point very racist, very Eurocentric, and looking at how those trends might continue in terms of what we think of as valid scientific knowledge, in terms of what we think of as valid linguistic knowledge, right? And so within that, for example, I just wrote a paper on looking at how Indigenous communities can approach linguistic knowledge. When linguists come into our communities and they tell us something about our language, we don't have to take it as just a fact, right? A lot of the stuff that we do is theoretic, and by definition, theory is not fact. It is just something that we think is going on. And so sort of encouraging Indigenous communities to gather their epistemological frameworks and ontological frameworks and axiological frameworks and converge on these things that linguists are telling us about our languages, to filter it through our own cultural lens, right? So if somebody comes in and tells us something about our language, how does this impact us as Indigenous people? How do we think about this as Indigenous people? And how would we characterize this knowledge that is coming from Western spaces into our Indigenous environments? How would we characterize that knowledge? And do we agree with it? We don't have to all the time, you know? So those are two of the main things that I do. I think for me, my biggest goal is that whatever I do in terms of linguistics, that in 10, 20, 30 years from now, young O'odham linguists will come and they'll take that stuff and they'll either use it, or they'll prove me wrong, or they'll argue for something else, because at the end of the day, they're at least working with the language still, and they're still studying the language, and they're still working on trying to understand the language. And that's really all that I want. So that's my biggest goal, is that I can sort of start this trend. And for me, that trend was really started with Dr. Ofelia Zepeda, who I did get to work with at U of A. The work that she's done on O'odham, I remember growing up and like reading that stuff and just being in awe that somebody could put this down on paper and really start getting the ball rolling and stuff. So unfortunately, there aren't very many O'odham linguists as it stands. So hopefully in the future, or maybe people watching this right now, if you're interested in what linguistics is, I'm very, very happy to sit down and schedule a talk with you to discuss options. So.
Awesome, that's really great. Lisa, would you like to share what you're doing?
It's a little complicated, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun because I'm kind of I am getting to fulfill dreams and ideas that I had during my undergrad, but also throughout my master's program. So originally my dissertation, so for my program, the School of Anthropology at the University of Arizona, I have to write a dissertation. It could have also been a book. I opted to do a three articles for publication. Two have to be in scholarly journals that my committee chair has to approve. And the third one can go in any journal of my choosing, so long as I talk with my committee chair about what journal that is. So I didn't opt for the book just because I felt like it's not going to be accessed as much as a journal article. Journal articles are very accessible to academics, not to community members, because not community members are not going to have a subscription to JSTOR like a lot of people in my field, or to Kiva, an anthropological journal. They're not going to have access to that, or archaeological journal. So I'm trying to make the best decision to make my work accessible, but that's really hard in academia because, again, depending on where I publish, that's who's going to have access to it. And it's likely not community members. But my hope is to turn my work into something that is accessible, whether it's doing talks or making some sort of video. My hope was to actually do a presentation for the public at the nation's museum. So make a flyer, invite people out and do a public presentation. I don't know, well, maybe that will happen. I'm not sure. And actually my dissertation research this was my original plan. I was going to work with a collection of artifacts that were gifted to the nation, that were questionably excavated and collected by an individual in O'odham country. And so this individual, who's a non-tribal member, he over decades excavated a huge area and collected all these artifacts, which included items that were buried with our ancestors. And so when this person passed away, they willed their collection to the nation. The nation has a collection of artifacts, and I was going to go through the artifacts and create an inventory of the materials, but also identify some pretty iconic materials in that collection itself. Iconic mean that they are easily identifiable and that they likely be of interest to the public, which is, I kind of had issue with, but again, this is kind of how my field works. I'm in anthropology, I do archaeology, and historically and presently, both that field and that discipline, they are very, they're not fun to be in if you're native. There's some really hard discussions that you have regularly in class with your instructors, with your cohort, with individuals who you have to do class projects with, and even with people who might be members of your committee. Really difficult discussions that you have to have because a lot of times what you want to do for your community isn't really considered rigorous, and so archaeology is considered a STEM field, and the School of Anthropology is one of the top anthropology programs in the country. And so it's super competitive, especially at this level, super, super competitive. The students are competing with each other. And there's just, you're competing for money, you're competing for projects and information and so forth. And so I don't feel I'm built for that, being competitive at that level, because my ideas are more catered to, well, what's useful for the community to know, what's useful for the future, for future community members to know. And so I kind of got torn between, well, am I going to look specifically at artifacts that are considered diagnostic of the region, diagnostic of a particular time periods? And part of me, it makes sense to do that as an archaeologist, but as a community member, I'm not trying to look at artifacts that are simply beautiful. I'm trying to figure out how to place these artifacts back into the hands of the community members. And so through that, I was actually planning to work with the community and the district where the artifacts came from. And that would have entailed working with elders and working with young kids to teach them more about archaeology and how they connect to the past, but also how they can preserve their past and how they can, regain that control of their past, because unknowingly, these materials were removed from their lands. And, I guess essentially the thought is that these artifacts aren't necessarily the property of the museums, because the museum is not near where near the community where those artifacts came from. So it's kind of messy, but I wanted to have that conversation, begin that conversation, because if it means 30, 40 years from now that those materials can go back home to where they came from, then that's great. I want to have this conversation. So that was my original plan. And I had meetings and I was going to that community and they were all excited about it. And I was too. And we were working with the kids, the youth, and we were doing site visits and stuff. It was really great. Then COVID happened and everything shut down. The Nation's Museum is still shut down. I no longer have access to the materials or the lab. And, it is unfortunate. So I'm not doing what I originally set out to do. What I'm essentially doing is writing a giant literature review, which I'm okay with because I'm still pursuing thoughts and ideas that I'm really interested in. What I am currently doing is I'm examining autumn settlement patterns and the use of plaza spaces, so the spaces in between. So I grew up with in my family's village, of course, where everyone is related to each other, and you have the center, you have the feast house, you have the church, and then you have the houses of clustered where the aunties are, and then the grandmas and the grandpas are in that or in the same household as us. And so you have trails that lead to these houses from one house to another. And so I'm really interested in how those spaces connect communities presently, but also in the past. I'm also really interested in structure use because in my household alone, there were 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room, and a long kitchen area. But those rooms were used for multiple peoples and objects. And so my thought is, well, my home was multi-generational. So in the past, those would have also been multi-generational homes. In these rooms, we made fire in this room. We stored stuff for Rimoshan in this room, or we stored our food in that room, or we built a whole different structure for those materials because they're not supposed to be touched throughout the year, except for this one certain time of the year by only these certain individuals. So I'm looking at structure use, but also the use of the land around structures and structure clusters. And I'm also thinking about other houses of my grandparents who had old adobe houses and how those were just single room structures. And in that single room, you would have grandma and grandpa in the room, and then all of us kids sleeping on the floor, and we'd be fine. And we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner in there, or we'd go under the vato and eat, or, we would help my grandma clean the floor by sweeping, with a brush and then putting water down to make sure it stays hard. So there's different structure uses and activities. And those practices are still being used today because I have an auntie who still lives in a structure with the dirt floor, and we help prepare her floor, and my own kids help prepare her floor so it stays firm and it stays closed. So I'm looking at how these practices are considered practices and lifestyles, life ways of the past, but actually they're still continuing to be practiced today. So in archaeology, we talk about, oh, well, the Hohokam in the pre-classic period, they plastered floors and they had bell-shaped cavities in the floor of their homes to store food and so forth. We see what's there archaeologically, but I'm thinking about, well, what are we seeing now? And how are those connections still there? Because we still have cold rooms. We still have structures that are still completely dedicated to food. The food looks different. It's not hard that's being stored in there. It's actually, all our Russian food, it's like the purpose of that structure is still the same. Or we have a whole other structure that's storage / guest space, and that surely existed during the time of the Hohokam. And so I'm thinking about those connections, and I want to draw those connections and that continued use of space and structures from the Hohokam times to presently, to right now, to today, to my own upbringing, because we are connected to the past, despite the ongoing controversy of, well, are the O'odham really the descendants of the Ho'okam? Because that's still being debated. A lot of people are taking the side of the O'odham and saying, yes, yeah, absolutely, you are. You were here when the Spanish arrived and you're here now, absolutely. But there's still the other side who's like, no, we don't have the biological evidence. The evidence is in the biology, and they won't get that. We don't do studies in DNA. They won't get that. So they're going to have to take our word for it. And so part of contributing to that package of what our word is me writing the materials that connect us to the past through our contemporary life ways. And it's not what I originally planned to do with working with people, working with elders, working with youth, working with the little ones. It's not that, but it's still getting at something I'm really, really passionate about and something I really care about. And it's, it's a way to channel my memories, my family, and how I grew up and how I'm still living today. So it means a lot to me to be able to do that. And it goes to show that you can grow up on the res and be resi as possible, and you can do research. You can get a PhD, you can get a master's. All I was interested in doing as a kid was walking the trails and chilling in the wash and swimming in the water. And I can write a master's thesis. And right now, all I wanted to do was go hang out with my grandma and grandpa because they let me do whatever I want because I was the baby. And I would just love their houses. I loved, that they cooked for me and they took care of me. And I loved the fires in the morning and I felt so safe and warm there. And so now I kind of get to honor them too, because I get to talk about their houses. And I loved that. Again, I felt so safe in, and I was well fed. So I get to do that now. So it's pretty amazing. I didn't know that I could, just grow up and do research and write about it. The only, the only issue now is that I kind of have to frame it in a way that is considered rigorous, that aligns with the STEM field that I'm in. And that's the only difficult part, because in that world is you publish, you do public talks, you do presentations, you go to conferences, you compete. And I don't necessarily want to do that. What I want to do is have conversations with community members. What I want to do is, talk to them about their memories. I want to talk to them about ways that we used to live, because looking back at those ways we used to live, it can make sense to bring back those ways. The courtyard idea, the courtyard being central, enclosed, with the murdoch all around, having that space made sense then, and it makes sense now to separate and build HUD homes. I'm not too sure about that. To build apartment buildings essentially on the reservation. I don't know about that, but what does and what did make sense for hundreds of years were settlements on the landscape connected by a plaza space. And so I'm just trying to talk to community members as much as I can about how those places and spaces really made sense then, and they can make sense now. And how do we bring that back? How do we protect those ways of life that I think really united us as a people and as families and made our villages stronger? So I'm trying to get out all that in my research.
Great. And I want to highlight too and point out that everything that we're doing in terms of, our dissertation or the papers we're writing, like, we are the individuals that should be doing this. It should be O'odham writing about O'odham linguistic, theories and other parts of, all of that. And then Lisa, what she's doing and everything, it should be an O'odham doing it. And then, and this is kind of like my spiel on how we need to have more O'odham, more Native Americans in higher education, writing these papers, doing this research, because for too long, there's been others, outsiders, non-O'odham doing this, and it's not the same, and especially bringing in our perspectives and honoring, our relatives, our ancestors, and, creating this material and doing all this hard work. So our younger generations, our future generations have this, and that's super important. And for myself, for my dissertation research paper, so within American Indian Studies, similar to Lisa, you know, you have options on how you want to, you know, go about with your research. And so we did have a paper option. I didn't, or a paper option and an article option. So I decided to do the paper. So my dissertation paper minimum has to be about 180 pages, several different chapters. And I love writing. I really think probably if I wasn't a good writer, I didn't get my bachelor's in journalism. I didn't, you know, win an award in 4th grade for writing. I don't think I'd be where I'm at, to be honest, because you have to like writing, like you know, the papers we have, because once you get into, you know, graduate programs, you don't have exams, you write long papers. So, you know, when I tell people, they're like, gosh, and I'm like, no, it's not a big deal. Like I have it all mapped out. It's okay. So for me though, I'm doing this paper. And even for my master's and for my PhD, I reached out to my community and I said, what would you like to have more information on? Like, you know, really reaching out to not like community, but also my family as well. And so my auntie, Julie Ramon Pearson, she is, you know, been such a big help in my master's and even my PhD, and, you know, giving me ideas, connecting me with individuals and saying, you know, we need this, you know, and, you know, here's how you could go about it. And I actually got her to be a member of my committee. So with your master's, even a PhD, you have a committee. So you have like a chair who's like your advisor or equivalent to an advisor, and you have committee members. So these individuals help you and, you know, are essentially like a support group and making sure you stay on task, you meet those deadlines, they review everything, you know, they're help for you and help, you know, helping you get your degree. And so I actually made a point to have my auntie on this committee, and I was like, she needs to be on here and it's very important. And having her be a part of the whole process. And she gave me the idea to actually do my dissertation on the history of land and water in Sanavir. And if you don't know too much about Sanavir, or you haven't taken a class with me, I talk about Sanavir in the context of how we are different from the other parcels that make up the Tohono Nation, because we had the Santa Cruz River that used to run. We have the aquifers, you know, Father Kino, who came to Sanavir and, you know, built the mission there, you know, and all of the history. And then, but also to our fight for our water when it was taken. And also to the creation of the co-op farm that's in Sanavir, like all of these different historical events that happen. And even at one point there was a land developer that came in and wanted to make Sanavir look like Palm Springs, California. Could you imagine? You know, and so people don't know this, and people don't, you know, and I share some of this information like, wow, I had no idea. I'm like, me neither, but you know, I'm collecting this information, I'm sharing it. And, you know, biggest thing too in Sanavir is we went through allotment and we went through the Dawes Act. And so you have allottees, and I'm a future allottee, and it's complicated, it's complex, but for me, I need to know this information. So, you know, when it's my turn to step up, I know what's going on. And I'm like, there's others just like me. And so if I'm wondering, they're wondering too. And, you know, also too, with some of our elders, you know, they're not getting any younger. So finding, you know, these individuals who are there at these historical events and recording them and capturing their voices and interviewing them. So that's what I've done through my research. And that's the journalist in me. I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories, their experiences, their opinions, their thoughts, everything. So I was able to sit down with, I think it was about 15 individuals and having them share. And these were multiple interviews with some of these community members from Sanavir. And, you know, it was really an awesome experience to have done that. And then now I'm taking this and all of the knowledge they shared with me, and I'm weaving it through my dissertation. So it's not just all literature. It's not just me talking, me paraphrasing. You're going to hear directly from these individuals because it's important. Their voices are important to be heard and shared, and then also recorded, because these recordings are forever, you know, these audio recordings, and they can be stored in various locations in Santa Vera, on the main part of the nation, at TOCC, and people can listen to them. And then they can be shared with their families, you know, and I think that's really important because there's just this loss and there's this gap of information not being shared and being lost, and also those not understanding the importance and how important it is to be an Alati and what that even entails and means. And so I'm putting all that together, and I'm really wanting my dissertation paper to be a resource to you know, be read in and used in classrooms at TOCC, you know, even with talking with legislative and them wanting to read this and know more about the history. So, you know, they have a better idea when it comes to handling issues regarding water or land, or even, you know, if they attend an Alati meeting, like, you know, a lot of people don't know the history and the background. And I'm in a really, you know, unique place with what my family and like my auntie and my mom and everybody else, you know, the roles and, you know, what they've done for the Santa Vera community. So it's like, you know, talking to them and I'm like, share all your knowledge with me, you know, pass it on to me, and, you know, let me be able to put this together. And I really see this as like a living document, and it's going to be my life's work. You know, there's so much more I want to put into it, but I'm like, okay, I need to graduate. I need to focus on just getting so much of it done. Then all these other awesome parts of it, I can add to it, you know. And another part that I've talked about with the Santa Vera Lati Association is actually making my paper into a booklet or, you know, something of that, so it can be handed out to all the Latis and it can be shared with them, and they'll have this resource. So, you know, different things like that. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's like, yes, my name is on the paper, but this is for my community. It's for the nation. It's for, you know, folks to understand and have a better understanding, you know, yes, first and foremost, if you're O'odham, but also non-O'odham too, and to have a, you know, again, a chance to understand. And so super excited about it, and, you know, just happy that I can do this for my community, and like I said, having my auntie be a part of it, and you know, having her sit on my committee and helping make decisions. And I think also too, when I get to the point where I close to the end, I should say, and having people read drafts, welcoming community members and say, hey, you want to read this and tell me what you think, and having their input. That's what it's all about, you know. It's all of us getting my dissertation, right? All of us writing my dissertation paper in a sense here. So, but yeah, you know, again, I always get really excited, and I've done several different talks about my research and everything else. And so, like I said, I'm at the very end and looking forward to finishing it and having it done, so then I can move on to all this other side projects that are relatable that you know, can also be, like I said, added on as chapters later on, or, you know, what have you. So yeah, so let's move into our last question as we finish our panel discussion here. And we kind of talked about this a little bit, but just wanting to kind of ask again, when you're done, when we're all done, like what do you want to do with your degree? You know, all of us are teaching, we're all instructors. I mean, is that you know, a main goal of yours? Is there other things you'd like to do? Like, is there a dream job, or, you know, anything like that that you're kind of thinking about, or is it just unknown right now? You know, what are your thoughts on that? So Lisa, let's start with you.
Oh no. I'm not too sure what I will end up doing when I finish my program. I hope to be done within the next year, year and a half, maybe less. I'm not too sure. But I hope to be done soon. I do have other projects that I like doing. I like talking with people. I like going to visit people. And so my hope is that when I'm all done, I get to go visit people more and check in with family and just relatives all over. That's what I hope to do when I finish. Yeah, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do when I finish. I like being an archaeological monitor, but the job it can be really hard physically because you're outside all day and you are sometimes, well, I'm also an archaeological field technician, so I can excavate and I can do archaeological survey, I can do documenting. So I do a lot of different things. And so, yes, it can be physically demanding. Yeah, I was working the border wall, the construction of the border wall west of the nation, so south of Yuma, and there were some hot days there, some very, very, very hot days, but it was amazing. The landscape is amazing. The project was like terrible, obviously, because they're building the border wall and they're installing it. But it was really meaningful to be there and bear witness to the destruction, because in the future, my hope is that it can be undone. There's some parts of that cannot be undone, but my hope is that that it can in some way be undone. So it was important to bear witness to that. So I wouldn't mind continuing to do archaeological monitoring, but again, it can be physically demanding. And they say in archaeology, and there's some people who do this until they retire, and that's great, but everyone on average, they meet their burning age, which is like, okay, I've been in the field for 30 years, 40 years. Okay, I need to do something more than this, because the pay, depending on experience, your pay can vary from $14 to $21. But, considering the fact that I would have a PhD, I would be completely underpaid for doing archaeological monitoring, but it's a meaningful thing for me to do. So I'm torn between doing what I think is right, which is making sure that our ancestral places are being respected when archaeological work is being done, versus, oh yeah, it's nice to be able to pay my bills. That's kind of nice. It's good to have electricity and a vehicle and to contribute when there's feasts and be able to donate things. That's also really important. So I'm torn between that. And then with the monitoring, there's traveling. So I could be in New Mexico for like 2 weeks, or for the border wall project, I was, oh my gosh, it was like over a month, I think, that I was living out of a hotel in not Yuma, the little town before Yuma, I forget what it's called, in Ajo, actually. So, it can be really hard to do that. And the traveling, and then, like I said, the physical part of it, like doing, this is a whole totally different project. I was doing an archaeological survey in the Patagonias. That was fun. It was great. But man, I was sliding down rocks and slopes like nobody's business. It's, and it's okay to do that. You fall a lot. You get injured. You get bit by things. It just happens. But, I think at some point, I think I should be probably doing something that's a little more stable, where it's not just seasonal. It's project to project based. The pay can vary depending on experience, depending on the project. And that's, there's no job security is what I'm saying. There's no job security in that. So I can't say I'm going to remain dedicated to that from now until forever, until I retire. And I am teaching right now. I think it's a lot of fun. I do enjoy it. I enjoy teaching. I like talking to the students. I wish I could do more talking about archaeology in general, but because that's my passion. I'm teaching Tohono history and culture, and so I can include archaeology in that and everything that the past of O'odham, like I can include all kinds of elements. historical events, figures, and including archaeology. But my research is in archaeology, and that's my passion. I love archaeology. So if I could find something that can tap into that interest, the deep interest of archaeology, that would be pretty cool. But I can't say that's going to happen. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I really don't know. My hope was always to try to inspire other tribal members to be to do archaeology, but it can be really hard physically, and it can be really hard emotionally, spiritually, because you're dealing with materials from the deep past. And so while I'd like to say, oh, it's for everyone, it really isn't. It really isn't for everyone, because it can be really taxing on you. And it does take partially knowing law and policy, which can be very complicated and not fun to think about, because even though knowing law and policy, it can be empowering, it can also be, it can kind of hinder growth, because it wasn't really written or structured in a way to benefit tribes, especially our tribe, and especially considering the border wall construction. So it's just taxing. It's just very, very taxing for those reasons. But I love archaeology. I like doing tribal monitoring. I like talking to community members. I enjoy that, but I don't know, honestly, like what I can do when I finish. But I do want to finish. I do want to finish my program. I do want to get my degree. I want to be able to put it to some good use, but I'm not too sure what that would be at this point. But
hey, that's okay, and I think that's a good example for, to show our audience and students that, you don't always have to know what the next step is going to be, and you're saying this now, Lisa, and who knows, maybe a awesome job opportunity comes up after you're done, that you least expected, and you just kind of sometimes got to roll with it, and kind of be like, it's, and it's totally okay and fine to say, that's a good question. I don't know.
yeah.
And just kind of seeing what unfolds and what opportunities, do, or come your way, essentially. So, Jeremy, do you want to add to that? Or are you kind of in the same boat as Lisa? What are your thoughts?
I kind of already have my dream job, if I'm being honest. I've wanted to teach specifically language, specifically at TOCC for a very long time now, especially since TOCC is a very one-of-a-kind institution, an educational institution that serves an O'odham community and bases its practices in O'odham culture and history. Is a huge deal that it exists. And to be able to teach the language at that or for that institution, I've always wanted to do that. And luckily, in summer of 2016, a lot of you guys out there, and you guys as well, will know Gabby Casares Kelly. I met her that summer, and she was at that time still working at TOCC, and she discussed the idea of like having an online class, and so she put my name in, and the next summer I was teaching it, and it was really awesome. So I continue to do this, stay in academia, continue to teach for the nation. I also, outside of TOCC and outside of my graduate work, I do work with my home community. We just got an ANA grant for language materials development, and so that's something I continue to do with them as well. So right now I'm kind of like in the perfect, because I got my dream job before I actually graduated, so I'm in a good place, I guess. But like you said, you never know. Maybe after I graduate, or maybe in 10 years from now, I'll be in a different place. Academia is, unless you are on tenure track, pretty unstable, right? Unstable. So you never really know. So we'll see. How about you, Jacelle? Where will you be?
Good question. But I am kind of like how you are, Jeremy. I dream job is to teach, and I always joke that I have teaching in my blood because of my parents, which I've always wanted to teach. And I had this opportunity to apply at TOCC to kind of move up from being adjunct and instructor, and I really like where I'm at. But at the same time too, I think down the road I would like to be at the University of Arizona. Dr. Cepeda is representing, holding it down for us O'odham there. But when she retires, that's going to leave with her. And we need more O'odham to be like Dr. Cepeda and representing and being in those roles as, you know, professors at the U of A. And I would really like to do that in the long run. But right now, you know, yeah, I'm loving what I'm doing, and it's everything I've wanted to do. And, you know, a big goal of mine was to, since my mom retired, to pick up where she left off and continue, you know, that traditional ecological knowledge, continue sharing. And, you know, and I always thought everybody grew up like how I did and had a mom that was a culture teacher and, you know, spoke the language, and realizing not everybody had that like I did. So, you know, I need to continue sharing that and, you know, being just like her. And she's very much part of everything I still do. And so she's still teaching me and my daughter and all my nieces and everybody, you know, and so that's, you know, it's really rewarding. And again, it's just, yeah, I think I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. And we'll see where, you know, the future takes all of us and what we're all doing, you know, and, you know, who knows, we'll look back on this and be like, you know, oh yeah, that's what we were doing then. Look at where we are now. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Jeremy and Lisa, for being on this panel with me today. And, you know, we'll turn it back over to the committee and go with our Q&A session for this event.
Thanks, Jacelle. Can I add one really quick last thing for any of the viewers here? If you ever just want to talk about what it's like to apply to higher education, whether it be for your bachelor's, master's, or PhD, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk through the process because it can be kind of confusing and kind of frustrating. So reach out. I'm here to help.
Awesome. Me too. Always here to help.
Okay, oink. Nya pa resista kaka mahai chua. I love their presentations and I hope you enjoyed it too. Do any of you have questions? Jeremy is here with us. Questions or comments? And if you're shy, you can write it in the chat. Evan, you look like you're about to say something.
I'm trying to unmute myself. No, I just want to comment that was awesome. That all three, you know, the O'odham candidates. I'm blown away. I was looking forward to this when I saw the flyer come out that Francis had distributed. I was like, O'odham scholars! Oh my God! I've been looking forward to this one. I missed the second one. I was in the first one, but I was made sure that I was in this one this evening. I forgot this afternoon, of course. But yeah, they're inspirational. I can't say enough. You know, I'm gonna have everybody in my family look at these because I know they're being recorded. So I'll look at them again for more inspiration as well. I mean, just on a day-to-day. You're going back and forth to work or something. But yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Since you're here, and I'll let Jacelle know when I do see her. Hope she can be on campus again. Thank you.
How Sapwa. It's really exciting, and you know, and just from my personal end, I'm excited to see that TOCC is kind of like the stew pot of O'odham scholars. And you know, yes, we have O'odham scholars out there, but we didn't both, you know, elders, well, across the generations. And it's cool to look at things from an O'odham perspective. And I like what Jeremy said. We were talking about something. He was sharing about his study, about reduplication, about how, you know, O'odham, we just know, like, of course you're gonna double the word, you know, And the one that I grew up hearing, Camilla shared his experience earlier, but I remember hearing some elder men talking, and they said something about, how do you say, how do you say cowboys in English? And he said cacao boys. So that was funny because, you know, like he said, it's just second nature. We know what to reduplicate and what we don't reduplicate. So anyways, Jeremy and I started talking about that, and I'll just share this experience. I was honored to take a class from Dr. Ken Halebut, and I remember him asking us in class, why do some animals have that double beginning? You know, like Baban, Mimstor, or Gogox, but yet some animals don't. You know, like now I can't think of any right now, like wow. And so then Jeremy and I were talking about it, and although the things, because there were other autumn in that class, and we said, well, because maybe it's because it's sacred in this sense, versus the other animals like Gogox, it's domestic. But then we knew it wasn't the reason, because, you know, the bun is also sacred. So anyways, we got into that philosophical discussion. And so Jeremy pointed out, you see, that's what autumn would think from that autumn perspective. American linguists, a non-autumn linguist, they would look at it like, well, the grammar rules would be because, you know, they would look at the writing and how it sounds and pronounced versus the role that word plays. But anyways, we all geeked out about it and started talking about it, because my area is socio-cultural linguistics that looks at, you know, when people use nyok, what does it tell about the person and how they live and how they see the world? Jeremy, jump in. I'm trying to get you in the conversation.
Oh, fuck, I didn't even realize. I thought you were just
Or did you take a power nap over there?
It is almost bedtime.
Oh, Shaftajo.
Sorry, 1 second.
Jane, you have a question or comment?
Just a comment. I'm so excited to be finally listening to this and just watching the college from when it started. And it's just so exciting to see all of you who are strengthening the whole Tohono language program, Tohono studies. It's so great to have Francis back, and just, you know, Evan has joined the college. Is it a year yet, Evan? But within the language program and now the whole language center, just looking at the names here, it's so exciting. And then it's such a pleasure to see people working on their PhD and being part of the college as they do that. And I started telling people I was an archaeology and anthropology major back east, and I never told people that because I didn't want them to think I was trying to study and then publish, which of course I'm not. But just seeing PhDs coming along, and could I go out and sort of sort some of the artifacts at some time? You know, it's just exciting to see what's happening at the college and the strengthening of so many more Tohono and Autumn faculty and staff. Just very big difference from when I joined. Juana, when did I start? 2009, full-time. But anyway, I just wanted to comment that it's just a real pleasure to hear this tonight and to see all of you and see what's happening with the college.
Tapa, Jeremy?
Yeah, I didn't actually, in the first session, I was here before, I didn't actually get a chance to thank the committee for thinking of Jacelle and Lisa and myself to come on and talk about our journeys. So I'm really happy that you guys gave us this opportunity to talk a little bit more about what we're doing and what's going on with us lately. So thank you guys for that.
How Sapa, and you have other like Ben Jose, he's a fluent speaker, Leslie Luna, of course, and they also see things from because they're fluent speakers and grew up with that Autumn worldview. They also see it from an Autumn perspective. When we talk about academia, it's not like this what's that phrase that's used? I just remember hearing it on TV, a highfalutin talk or $100 words or whatever. I don't know what's the phrase. Somebody knows the phrase, but so it's really cool to get into discussions about some of the things that are out there, but talking about it from an Autumn perspective. And so I'm glad you guys are on that journey in doing that. And who knows, Evan might be joining a PhD program pretty soon. Wow.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Well, we're working on the PA program at TOCC. So.
Like I said, these individuals are inspiring. I want to thank them again. And of course, what Jeremy said about thanking Francis and Andrea, yourself, and all those on the Sylvia's here as well, putting all these forums together. It's you know, all the topics are very relevant to me, especially, but I think everyone could gain a lot of perspective from viewing these videos at a later date. So thank you again.
How Leslie or Ben?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm really interested in what Jeremy had stated about his studies in generative linguistics and bare noun phrases. Because I never really thought of it. I know when we reduplicate a word, we pluralize it, but I never really thought of it that it's innate. I mean, something that you just come naturally. And one thing that I just noticed that I have a niece that she put on Facebook, watch out for the hu'ulis, hu'ulis with Christmas shopping. And she used, I guess, the English pluralization of a word. And then it got me thinking, and how come we never say hu'ulis? I mean, and then I thought we only have one hu'ud. That's why. But it's something that's innate in us, that we understand when to use that rule. And another word that comes to mind is hahashan. We never say hahashan. I guess you can say it, but it sounds funny. I've always heard it as hashanik, like a lot of hashan, a lot of cactuses. And then also in the bare noun phrase, I was talking to my wife about this prior to this presentation, but it just kind of fits in perfectly because my wife, she commented one time that her grandma would say, would come to visit them. And she would say, and there's upper good jiva. And I would say, upper good jiva, and that's like the G determiner, good jiva, and the upper good jiva. And she was saying that, and I said, I mean, how come she says that? Would she say it like in a funny way? And I guess it's kind of like in a, here I am again. That's what she's saying, kind of like in a joking way. And it got me thinking too, because my grandma, she would say that too. She would say, when she was alive, she would say, and you use that G determiner, like I guess in a joking way, in like in a playful way. And but you never really say a good cox, like to start out a sentence. And it got me thinking, I mean, yeah, it does make sense, all these different little things that I never really thought of. But I'm really interested in your studies, Jeremy, and what you find out. But I just wanted to comment on that.
How, and just to add to that, about the Hashan, the way that it was explained to me, because I didn't feel comfortable saying Hahashan. I make a face and I won't comment where I saw that, but it would just be, what? That doesn't sound right, because I grew up hearing Hashanik. And then I asked somebody and they said, you know, the way they explained it, I still don't use it, but the way they explained it is when there's more than one Hashan, like just a couple, then it's Hahashan. But when it's like a slew of them, it's Hashanik. And we're used to seeing Hashan as, you know, Hashanik, you know, that there's always a bunch of them. But I still use Hashanik. I don't use Hahashan because it just feels funny. Not grammatically correct. But again, that goes with dialect, you know, because some people do use it. And then what you were talking about, the gugoks in class, when students ask me about that, I say in joking, we do use it, but we're joking. And it's not grammatically correct, but we're joking. And so you know, it's like they're learners, so they don't really, well, what do you mean? So then it's not right if we write it like this, and yeah, I'll still mark you wrong.
Which kind of makes sense with how it's being used, like in the Shapaguji or good, kind of like in the joking way.
How? Any other questions, comments? Karina,
Okay, good evening, everyone. I am very afraid to get on and speak, but I am a teacher. I teach K through 8. And when I hear you talking about education, I remember starting way back when, and I could say I went through many community colleges, trying to find my way, trying to find where I'm supposed to be. But I always believe that the Creator puts us where we're supposed to be. So I'm teaching now in St. Peter's at the Catholic school. And I just wanted to thank everybody for these past 3 presentations. I came in late. Sorry, I came in late. But as you were talking and you were sharing, those are things that I am a learner, but you're helping me to understand, because I get what you're saying about the animals. We just got done doing with my students. Our lesson was singular and plural on the animals, and you know, and it's just the basics. And I think it's awesome that we have professors eventually going to be those professors, because we need them. We need them to come and help these young students that are coming up, that they're learners just like myself. And I had to learn to not be ashamed to be a learner. I had to help my students to realize that there were a lot of things that happened. That's why the language went to sleep, but we're here now. And I just want to praise my students today for them learning that we may not think that some of our students don't realize that they're Native American or that they're American Indian. They don't know. And as teachers, it is our job to help them, to find ways to reach them, to identify self-identity. So I was really proud at my kindergartens for saying, I am autumn. Just that alone, that's what being a teacher is all about, is when we can teach our students something in self-identity. So I just wanted to share that. And when the gentleman, Evan, I believe, said he's not ready, he don't see education furthering his education, that's what I tell myself all the time. I can't do it no more. I'm tired. But anytime that there's education free, I'm on it. I'm going to take it. Don't matter how old I am, I'm there, you know. So, and I tell my students that, you know, education, before we used to have to fight tooth and nail for it, funding wise, through our tribes, any kind of support, especially when we're out there in town on our own. But again, I tell my students, look at Tucson as the community college. There's a college there. I say, and can you believe they're offering free classes? You know, I'm telling people now because I'm hearing it from you. I'm sharing with people all the different colleges, you know, all around. And I think it's awesome. So thank you for letting me share. Sapa.
How Sapa and anybody can be a teacher, you know, as long as you're willing. And I'm glad that you're continuing to be a learner, because even as a speaker, I'm still learning. And I get excited and geek out about the nyok when I hear the cooker, but you know, the old nyok. Oh, how I forgot about that in the context that it's used. So it's you know, our language is awesome and our hymnbook is awesome. Jeremy, Margaret.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say, when you Karina mentioned you had to sort of come to terms with being classified as a learner. That's something that I run into a lot with students. They either feel like they're ashamed that they're not fluent speakers, or they are ashamed that they're going to make mistakes. So one thing that I tell people is everybody at one point was a learner, because you do not come out of the womb speaking the language. So even your first language, you spent a good part of your childhood learning how to speak. So nobody gets out of that, no matter if it's your first language or your second language. And secondly, nobody learns a language without making a mistake. Those of you who have children will know that they make mistakes all of the time. That's part of the learning process. It's something that just happens. So I try to instill this in people that, you know, it's just part of being human. Like the fact that we can acquire language is a huge thing, but it's not perfect. There's always going to be some little roadblocks. There's always going to be some little stumbles, and that just is how it happens. So I think it's great that you're approaching it that way, from, you know, saying, I am a learner, I'm embracing this. And once you have that out of the way, it feels like everything else kind of falls into place. So I want to thank you for being a learner, because a lot of people say, I want to learn a language, I want to speak it, but they don't actually take any steps to doing so. So the fact that you are doing that, I think is really good. Good job.
How Habaapim Agnes Joanne Namtamhasaiti Hai Chokaka Hai Choyaga.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just really amazed at all three. Like Evan said, it was really interesting and just exciting to hear what's all being said, and even like that making you like the language, like Leslie was saying also, you know, I never really explored it in that sense, but it's just all really interesting.
How Sapa Joanne?
Yes, thank you to the three candidates. Really inspiring, your words, your journey. Thank you for sharing with us. It really benefits. I'm sure it's going to benefit a lot of people, including myself. You know, it's just so awesome to hear your words of encouragement, your journeys, and I wish you the best, you know, and continue on, and we're looking forward to those PhDs and those doctors. Thank you.
How waha'a. Lori, looks like you're joining us from Keep Peak. Do you want add any comments or questions?
Well, I wanted to thank you very much. And I wanted to thank you all, the candidates and the committee, for such a fascinating and inspiring evening. I really enjoyed these presentations and the discussion and learned a lot. I'm fortunate enough to work a little bit with Jacelle and learned about these presentations through a colleague of ours who I think was present in the afternoon session. And so thank you to the college for posting this information and making it so easy for someone like me to come along and connect to it. But thank you all. That was just fascinating.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for joining and being interested in participating. I mean, this is the kind of session that leads to future collaborations or just reinforcing relationships. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. I hope to be able to do it again.
We're working on it. Haba api Ben naptamahas jay. Hanapkesh jamagugosit. Nas ashke agugosit. Like, so Sylvia, do you want to share anything, or Francis, before I hand it over to Juana?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Jeremy. I thank you for your comments regarding making mistakes. I made a good one the other morning. You know, Jeremy and I go to the autumn NAHM sessions that Anselmo has on Monday mornings at 8:30. And I had to ask Jeremy what, you know, I was supposed to ask him what his name is. And I said, Jeremy Shopchukit. And it was so funny. I said, oh no, I wasn't supposed to say Jeremy. But it was so funny. But yeah, those kinds of mistakes, you know, are just kind of, you know, interesting sometimes, because you don't want to. I'm actually learning, and I'm glad I'm attending those sessions, because I've been learning a lot. And I know, and Andrea, I know that every time I talk to Andrea, I have to talk to her in autumn. What autumn I know she expects me to be there to talk to her in that way. So, and she'll correct me, you know, at times, but I am learning. So thank you. And thank you to all the presenters. And it's been a learning experience being on this committee, putting all this together. And I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Francis?
I just wanted to thank everybody for being here and for joining us throughout the different sessions that we've hosted this month. It's been a lot of fun, and of course, working with the committee. So thank you to all the presenters and to everybody that's been attending.
Definitely. It was a joy to be on this committee. We really discussed about, we wanted to share not only the how inclusive TOCC has become since the free tuition, and wanted to highlight other nations, not just Autumn, but other nations that are attending the college. And I know some of you guys missed the traditional dinner. I helped to plan that menu, and I was so looking forward to it. And I didn't get to eat with you all, but that was amazing. I'm sure it was amazing. And so to have those sessions, and then to think about our PhD candidates, and we also wanted to highlight their work, because as you know, as instructors, as teachers, and whatever our profession is, you know, when we get a chance to talk about what we do, what we love, why we're doing it, and our passion behind it, and we just, you know, it was really amazing to see how that turned out with Jacelle sharing her work, and Lisa sharing her work, and Jeremy sharing his work. It was just exciting. And then to know, I've known Lisa since she was in high school. She was one of our high school students. And to see her blossoming into what she's doing now and continuing to blossom. And Jacelle, I know her mom very well. Also, she was a teacher at Hashan, and I knew her way before San Simon days in the early 70s, late 70s. Also, and then to see her stepping into her own, and then Jeremy, you know, getting to know him through the college. So we, as a committee, it was we didn't have to think twice about, hey, we need to highlight these people, and hopefully inspire some people to pursue a higher degree. I mean, not a higher degree, but advanced degree. How Nahay Jamia, before I hand it over to Miss Swana. Jeremy, do you want to share anything?
Just thanks again. You guys did a lot of work this month, so good job. Good job to you guys, actually. That's everybody, give them a little clap.
Porque ay kanta muy taco Juana sai chasti.
Anda procho humo matam sis api itak itahiwa kan ibadak. Ukukchamam tawusich apim sapojuk itata matap haisho mai up amajuk abwusich amajuk. My heart is really in the right place at this point in time because of each and every one of you. For all that is happening today, because that's why the college was built, to enhance our lives, so that we all know who we are, where we're going. And this is one of those very, very important parts, is to know who the O'odham are, who we are, if we are O'odham or another tribal group or whatever, to know who we are, where did we come from, where are we coming from, where are we going, and who's coming with us. And with that, I really am pleased that how each one of you has shown up today, and that you go back and you spread the word to your students, to your children, to your grandchildren, to the elders, what the college, the Gukar Hamashamakut, is really there for, is to help us to understand ourselves, to understand each other, to understand our lives, and to work together to become even better people in every sense of the word, as O'odham, as whatever tribal group we are, and that we all work with the Milligan or whatever, the general society, because that is the only way we can survive. And this is the road that we're on, I believe, today and every day, in what, especially through what happens at So the same for me, as everyone has said already. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here, for being a part of the research group what we're doing to help each other, to help ourselves, and to help our children, our grandchildren, and the generations to come of all of them, as well as all other peoples. Hugodai.
Paul, our president, our Wanyumadam, to close us out, can you say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Skukudnik. It's very exciting to be part of this tonight, and I do want to thank the committee and everybody responsible for this whole month of activity that you've provided, and the fact that it's accessible to people who aren't here with us right now. And as Evan said, maybe watching it over and over. I hate to see that he's going to be watching it on his cell phone as he drives down the highway to the new office, though. But anyway, we'll have to watch out for him. Remember that blue pickup he drives.
Yeah.
I just think we're at a really nice juncture right now. There are a lot of terrible things going on. We're weathering the storm as best we can. We're being as safe as we can. And we're trying to encourage students to come back onto campus this semester, both up at the Skikig Mashtamaki and also TOCC Mashtamakud. We hope that'll happen. We don't know yet. But I think as they're there on campus, perhaps even more so, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make an invidious comparison, but I think just the idea that there is something going on in terms of indigenizing the academy, I think that we can see that that's part of our strategic plan. And it's not because what's in the strategic plan that it's happening, but it's happening organically. And that's very exciting to see. And Jane kind of pointed that out from her historical perspective, and Juana also. And I just, I'm very excited. I'm really pleased that I was able to tune in and listen tonight. And I'm looking forward to more presentations and Q&A sessions and so on down the road. So thank you.
Okay, Ike, if there aren't any more questions or comments, so opo manyoy.
Opo manyoy.
How? Pomnyoy.